right.
Oh boy.
Oh, it doesn't work. Oh no.
Code is not. Oh no.
Technical difficulties.
Technical difficulties.
Oh, do we not have a code? We should probably make a code.
Definitely.
Sounds like a good idea.
Should probably get started though, and someone else can make the code while we're.
Yeah. All right. So everyone can see the screen, right? We're all good
Your
here.
screen's kind of striped. It's weird.
I
Can you
put the code in
reshare?
chat. Code's in chat. It's CSS is life.
Yes, that's his life.
Hey, can you update the slides?
Yes, I'll update
Yeah.
the slides right now.
Yeah.
All right, now you can just like reopen it. It should be good.
All right. Okay, cool. So are we good? Like, let's we can go ahead and get started.
Yeah, for sure.
For the first workshop in our series. So welcome everyone to ACM Hacks Hack School Workshop Series. This is a Learn the MERN bootcamp where we'll be teaching you everything you need to know to build a MERN stack web application. So that includes MongoDB, Express, React, and Node.js. So today is our first part where we'll be teaching you HTML and CSS. So just the super basics of web development. And the checking code is CSS is life, which is false because CSS is not life. Let's move on. All right, so some important links for the series. If you're part of the ACM Hack or Hack School bootcamp, if you officially applied and you officially joined in, then you can go ahead and look at you should have already gone through our workshop 0, which is all like the simple installations. So that would be like text editors, Git, getting a Unix shell and all that. And the slides for this series are right here, fall 20. This is actually wrong, should be part 1. But yeah, this is the repo. Yeah, let's move on. All right, so yeah, real quick before we move on, let's make sure everyone has a text editor because we will be doing some development during this workshop. So we highly recommend VS Code over any other text editor because of all the features it has. The UI is beautiful. It has an integrated terminal, everything's good with VS Code. We love you, Microsoft. All right, so yeah, I'm here to explain what is Hack School. I kind of gave a spiel earlier on, but Hack School is basically, like I said, a 6-week boot camp during the fall quarter. We usually have this every fall. We started last year, and then this is our second iteration this fall. So this is a 6-week boot camp where you will be developing a project from start to finish. So this will be fully hands-on. You'll be developing all the code. We'll be teaching you how to develop some of it, and you'll learn all the concepts through our PowerPoint slides. If you haven't already joined our Discord, make sure to join it in that link. This is our own hack community, and we'll be having most of our communication on Discord. Like I said before, if you want access to our resources, which include office hours, personalized help, and just a general chat with your Hack School community, make sure you apply to join Hack School officially in that sign-up link. You'll have access to joining all our office hours, and all the schedules are in that calendar link. So to break down each workshop will be broken into different types of phases where we'll have content presentations by our event leads. Today, it'll be presented by David and Henry. They'll be teaching you HTML and CSS. And we'll also have hands-on coding sessions where you'll get to work hands-on building your own Pokemon generator. So today, we'll be working on the UI for that with HTML and CSS. We also have Discord channels with volunteers who will be ready to help you at any point during the event. So if you ever get stuck or need questions answered, then you can hop onto our Discord, and we have volunteers just chilling there, and they're ready to answer your questions. And yeah, here's a brief rundown of what our Discord for Hack School looks like. So ask any questions in the questions channel. During workshops, we'll have volunteers in the live Discord channels during the hands-on coding sessions. And we also have office hours taking place in the office hours voice channels. All right, so I'll hand it off to David. He'll go ahead and demo what we'll be making during this series.
Awesome. So I'm going to try to share my screen. Hopefully this works.
All right.
My laptop's like heating up right now. Oh wow, she's using everything she's got. All right, give me a sec to pull
Ooh,
over
what is this Apple event?
Chrome.
Very interesting.
Wow, this is giving me technical difficulties. All right, how do I do this? All right, there we go. Oh, nope, that's not what I wanted to do. I'm sorry, guys. How do I do this? You know what, Shrubin? I'm gonna hand it back to you for the demo because I need to fix my computer right now.
For sure. Yeah, I'll go ahead and demo. All right, let's get it here. We'll go to what is web development later. But yeah, I have the Pokemon generator application. So I was demoing it earlier on during this workshop, but yeah, this is the project we'll be making. These are some real examples of Pokemon that you will be making while testing your application. This is like a sanity check right here. But yeah, we'll be able to make your own Pokemon. You'll be able to give names, descriptions, moves, types for moves, and powers. So this is kind of like a catalog where you'll be able to kind of see through all your Pokemon. So we can go ahead and scroll through here. See all the Pokemon. We got this one. I don't know who made this one, but it's a pretty good Pokemon. Pretty good drawing. Yeah, woohoo. And we can go ahead and make our own Pokemon over here. So create new Pokemon. And we can draw anything here in our canvas. So we can go ahead and draw anything. I'll draw Daniel. We'll get a nice
Why
color
me?
here. We'll draw Daniel.
Why me?
Here.
What the? I'm offended.
Pardon my drawing skills. My drawing skills are slightly subpar.
No.
But,
Why is my what?
Art.
What is
This is
that?
like
yeah, we will
some,
get some
That is
hair
hair
in
pretty
here.
accurate.
this is like Picasso.
That is not accurate.
What's that thing between
We
his
need
legs?
the.
It's like
All right, I think we're good here. So we got Daniel Trong,
Oh my lord.
hack Pokemon. I think you'll be a fighting type. You're a fighter. We got
Oh, thank you,
I don't
thank
know
you.
why we got eat curry, Daniel. You're gonna eat curry.
Wait, what? Okay,
You're gonna fix your computer. You're an IT
Sure.
tech support, Daniel.
sure. Oh
What else do I
my-
have here?
I'm
Dance?
I'm not that.
You can dance. Go ahead and
No, I
dance. But
can't
yeah, you
dance.
guys will
I
learn
can't
how to make
dance,
all
I
these
swear.
form inputs and all this Canvas stuff during our workshops. And yeah, you can have.
Yeah, I mean,
Fairy type move.
oh, that's my favorite move. Move forward is my
Yeah.
favorite move. Ooh,
And I'll
and
go
you
ahead
get,
and load again. And you can
you get
see
all
down
these sick
here that-
animations.
yeah,
Sick
you can see all the animations. But yeah, down here we got Daniel Trong, the hack Pokemon. So yeah, this is what you guys will be building. You can customize this however you want, but this is what we'll be going off of. David, are you good to share your screen or?
I think you can keep presenting it. I'll just read off of your.
All right, for sure.
All right, awesome.
All right.
All right, so now we're going to get into the finer details. To start off with, we're going to go into a really complex coding language called HTML. Just kidding. HTML is not a coding language. I'm sorry, William, you're wrong. Well, I don't know. It depends on like your perspective. But anyway, what is web development? So web development, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. It's the development of the web. Oh, go back a slide. But web development consists of a bunch of different things. This includes web design, includes web publishing, web programming, and like database management. Primarily, it consists of like front end and back end development. We'll go into that in the next slide. But web development, usually the most commonly used languages you'll see is HTML for basically, the core like fundamentals of your website are written in HTML. You'll have CSS to style your website. You'll have JavaScript to, do some fancy stuff. Usually you can do like functions and, a lot of fancy stuff you see in websites nowadays is done with JavaScript. And Python is usually used for like backend stuff, either JavaScript or Python. But those are the most typical languages you'll see used for web development. In this workshop specifically, we're just going to be touching on HTML and CSS. So yeah, I think we're ready to go on to the next slide. We're going to talk about front end and back end development. So basically, front end development is everything you see on a website. So when you open up a web page, that is all the front end of the website. Everything you see, everything the user has access to is the front end of the website. The back end is not as clean as the front end. I think we can go to the next slide to show like a little bit of a meme for front end and back end development. So this is a guy playing with a little kid, and then that's what's really going on in the back. You don't really see that stuff going on, but back end development, typically that's, it handles like the server's logic, API calls, and all the database connections. That's pretty much all done in the back end. While the front end, like if you heard of like React before, React is used to code like the front end of your website. It's all like the styling and the design, all the interactive components of your website are going to be done on the front end. Yeah, that baby is really aggressive. So I think we're ready to go on to the next slide. All right, so HTML. So HTML stands, as you can see, for Hypertext Markup Language. Basically what HTML does is it allows you to create like structured sections like paragraphs, headings, links. Basically the core fundamentals of a website are all done in HTML. So it's the building blocks of your website, really. HTML is not a coding language, like I said. So you don't really have like that functionality to do like dynamic, anything really dynamic, I guess. Like, how you can do like for loops, or you can do, if statements and stuff. You can't do that in HTML. It's purely done for basically building your website, like the core fundamentals, the styling of your website. So when you're working with HTML, it's pretty simple. There's simple code structures such as tags, attributes. These are basically the core fundamentals of HTML. And I think we just go on to the next slide and start talking about tags. So this is what a basic HTML website looks like. You'll see at the top you have doc type HTML. So what this does, it'll basically tell the browser that this is an HTML file that it's going to parse and return to you in this file as a web page. So in this case, we have our HTML tags. So every HTML document is surrounded by these HTML tags. It just indicates that everything inside of that is HTML. You have the headings. So that's basically your metadata for your website. So as you can see, the title says all metadata goes here. And then you have a body as well. So that can be, headings, that can be paragraphs. Really whatever you want to be displayed on your website is usually put into the body. So we can go to the next slide. And I think this basically is what the website looks like. I think the top part's cut off, but you see it basically that paragraph in the last slide said, or the paragraph tag said all site content goes here. And the top part's cut off, but on the top, it'll say all metadata goes here. So, when you open up a link on your browser, for example, like if you have the slides open, it says Hack School Part 1 at the top. That's defined in the title part of your HTML. Yeah, I don't know who used Microsoft Edge for this, but I'm a little disappointed in your choice in browser. But yeah, we can move on from that. That is not Chromium. All right, cool. So now we're gonna go over some basic HTML tags. To start off with, the first one that is pretty common you'll see is the image tag. So if you ever want to render an image on your website, in this case, someone's using the image image.jpg with the alternative text, the thing didn't load. This will basically display an image. So for example, if you have an HTML file in one directory and in the same directory you have a file called image.jpg, if you have that line that says image source image.jpg, basically that image will be displayed on your website, as long as that file is inside of the same directory as your code. Another element you'll see is I think it stands for the attribute tag. So basically you can use this for hyperlinking certain websites. So for example, if you click on this text that says, well, it says the text that shows up, this is just code right here, but if you had this as a rendered HTML document, that text would be hyperlinked, and when you click on it, it'd bring you to othersite.html. So that would be like another HTML file. You can also just replace that with like another website. So you can put like a .com website, basically anything you want to hyperlink, you can use the a tag for. Next up, you have the headers. So this is just one type of header. I think there's H1 through H3, but each header is a different size. This one, I believe, is the biggest header size. So when you type in, it says this will be styled differently from paragraph. Basically, it'll be a bigger block of text than a regular paragraph. As you saw on the last slide, you just had like the plain text there. Headers are typically a little bit bigger, and we'll show you what they look like in an example in a little bit. We already went over the paragraph tags, but in order to indicate a paragraph in your HTML, all you have to do is put the P tag and then a closing tag. So if you see the backslash there before the P, almost every tag you have in HTML has to have a backslash and then the name of the tag following that in order for the tag to work correctly. So every block of content in HTML is usually surrounded in some way. However, if you look at like the top where you see image, that's just one thing. Like everything in that image, it can just be fit in that one block. So it just ends with the slash and then the little arrow. And then one more type of tag is the form tag. So this is typically if you're trying to like submit data, you're filling out a form. So in this case, it says use this form for form data. What someone could do is they click on that box. It'll render as a box. They can click on it and they can type in whatever text they want. And you could basically interact with the backend to collect form data with this, but it's basically for form inputs, pretty straightforward. And then we have divider elements. I'm not going to cover that too much here, but we'll go into that in a little bit. Cool. So now I'm going to go a little bit more in depth on attributes. So as you saw before, the image we had before was like image.jpg. Here in this case, on this slide, it's dungeon.jpg. So attributes are these little red blocks of text right here. I wish I could use my cursor, but I can't really do it when I'm not sharing the screen. But all of these are basically attributes of like the content that's going to be rendered by HTML. So for example, SRC, that stands for source. So the source file for this image is dungeon.jpg. Alt stands for like alternative text. So when you go on an image and it has like a little text box that shows up, that will be the alternative text. In this case, it says CSE basement. And then you have like the width. You can specify the width of an image, you can specify the height. There's a bunch of other attributes you can use, but these are probably the most commonly used for images. You also have, like I said before, the A tag for attributes. I don't think it stands for attributes, actually. Someone needs to correct me on that. But basically, this is for hyperlinks. So href, basically everything inside of that attribute will be used to hyperlink. And then, that text will show up as linked to Hack School. And then you have the HTML tags. So like I said, this basically specifies everything inside of these tags is going to be HTML. And the language attribute just specifies, okay, this HTML document is going to be in English specifically. Someone correct me. It's actually called an anchor tag, not an attribute. Thank you very much. And then before we had the inputs. So this specifies this type of input is text. Oh, that's nice. I like the pointer. So yeah, so this specifies as text. You can also change this to be like, numbers if you want to, just accept numbers as an input. But yeah, it specifies the type of input you'll take. And then lastly, we have like paragraph. So I'm actually not sure what title does, but I know align center, and that's pretty straightforward. It will align you in the very center of the document. So for example, if you go to like the example slide we had before 2 slides ago, that text would be completely centered in the middle if we had the align center tag, or sorry, attribute. We're ready to move on. All right, so I kind of already went over this before. These are just attributes, specifically boxed. I don't think we need to go over this still. All right, so here's a more in-depth example of like a full HTML document. I typed this up, but I'm just gonna go step by step on every part of this document. So we start off with the header. Like I said before, this is like the metadata for your document. So in this case, we have meta char set equals UTF-8. That specifies that we're going to be using the character set UTF-8. It's basically a standard set of characters that are used for web pages. We also have the title. So like I said before, when you open up your browser and you see the title on the tab, that's what's clarified there. You also have the link to a style sheet. So if you use CSS, which we will be using in this workshop, you want to include this line or something similar in your header. So this says rel, which stands for relative style sheet. And then we have the href, which is the reference to the styles.css file we'll have in the same directory. And then type just specifies this is a CSS file that we're going to be using for our document. And next up, we have the body. So in this case, this has 2 different images. I'll show you in the next slide what they look like after I finish this. But these are 2 images of dogs with the width 200, and the alternative text is image not found. So yeah, so you also have the headers. So we have hello world, which would be like a really big header. And then after that, you have a little bit of a smaller header that says, I wish I had a dog, which I do wish I had a dog. H3, which is, a little bit smaller, but my landlord won't let me. Yeah, I can't have pets in my apartment. Kind of sucks, but it is what it is. And then we have paragraphs, which is, like I said before, just, a regular block of text. And then we also have a reference, or sorry, we have an anchor reference. So basically what this will do is, I think it's colored wrong, so it threw me off. But basically it'll hyperlink the Instagram tag, or sorry, Instagram text, and you'll be able to click on it and go to that, that dog's Instagram page. So you can go to the next slide to show the example. I don't know if you've seen this dog before. His name's Tofu. He's all over Instagram. He's really cute. I really wish I had him as a dog. But yeah, if you guys wanted to just like, you know, copy that and like run it yourself, every HTML document will basically open up as a browser. Like your computer will ask you want to open this like Chrome or something, and then it'll render as this on your web page. I'm glad everyone likes Tofu. It's an amazing dog. All right, so we're gonna go on to the next slide.
All right, so hey everyone, I'm Henry. I'm also one of the event leads for this workshop. So now we're actually going to transition into actually writing some of the HTML for the Pokemon generator. So now what we want you to do is to open your text editor, which should be VS Code, because VS Code is superior. So you're going to open up the repo with VS Code, and from there, we're going to start writing some of the HTML. So one thing you also want to note is, just as a precaution, just make sure that you are currently on the master branch. So if you don't know how to do that on VS Code, you should be able to open up a terminal via, I believe it should be Control tilde if you're on Windows, and then either, I believe, Command tilde, please someone correct me because I don't use Mac, on VS Code for Mac, and you should be able to open up a terminal in VS Code. And from there, what you're going to want to do is to type in the command get branch, and that will usually output whether or not you are on the master branch. So once that's done, just make sure you're on the master branch. And then David will transition into talking about the first page that we're going to create.
Cool. So this is, you know, just a basic HTML web page we're going to do really quick. Basically, what you'll do is you'll render some images. So in this case, I have 3 GIFs of 3 different Pokemon. So this is, you know, Trico, Torchic, and Mudkip. And then we're going to have a little block of text below it, just describing like what they do. I just, you know, copy this from like the official Pokédex website. And then above each picture, we're also going to want to have a heading. So if you remember the H1 tag, you'll be using that for this. And yeah, I'm actually going to leave you guys to the breakout rooms in Discord first. So I'm going to give you guys like 5 minutes to try to figure this out yourself. But the first step to doing this, yeah, we have the instructions on the next slide. But you want to make a new file. So if you're using VS Code, you can just right click on the left side, create a new file, and then you want to name that view Pokemon.html. Oh yeah, about branching, sorry, I'm going to go back to that really quick. We're going to actually develop on the master branch this quarter, just because I think that, you know, having a bunch of different branches might be a little bit confusing. So as long as you're on the master branch, everything should be fine.
Can y'all give a quick like demo of how to like open the folder in VS Code and like get the repo down like real quick? Because I think a bunch of people are having questions about that.
Yeah, sure. So hold on. My laptop's about to die, so I'm gonna plug in my charger really quick. But
Oh my God.
I will open up VS Code if my laptop can handle it.
Yeah.
I can do it if you want.
You give a link to the the repository in the.
I know. Rip David.
Do you
I
want
know,
me to do it?
thank
I can
you.
do it. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So share screen. Cool. Hang on. All right.
Yeah. So before this workshop, you guys are supposed to go through the workshop 0. If you haven't gone through workshop 0, I recommend going through that now, because a lot of the stuff we're doing right now is based off of like stuff we already did in workshop 0. So how do you find where the repo went when you cloned it on your computer? So we'll go into that actually when we're doing breakout rooms with our volunteers. Someone can help you out, set that up. For now, I'm gonna show, I guess whoever has their screen share can VS Code.
Can you wait, can you just go through the process of like real quick of cloning and then opening it? Just because I think cloning shouldn't take too long. Yeah.
Yeah, so I already have the repo clone, but basically what you're going to do is you're going to open up a new terminal, which you can do with the keyboard shortcut Control tilde, or you can be able to go to the terminal tab up here and then create new terminal. And so from there, wherever you're located in your directory, what you can do is type in the command git clone, and then followed by the HTTP address of the repo, which if it's in chat, what's the
I think
repo
I
called?
posted it. I'll find it for you though.
Okay. Should be.
I'll just link to my Forge repository.
Okay.
So I can find it now. Oh, there you go.
Posted it.
Yeah. So what you're going to do is you're going to type in the address of the GitHub repo, and what that's going to do is going to basically clone the repo to your computer, and from there you'll have the folder with all of the contents of the repo, which at this point should be empty. So I'm not going to execute the command because I already have the repo open, but wherever the folder ends up being created on your desktop or computer, what you can do if you're not already in there is you can go to File, Open Folder, and from there you can open up wherever the folder is located. And from there you should be able to get to where I am right now. So these are the files I already created, but you don't have to worry about that just yet because David will be going over that in just a bit.
All right. So I think we can go back to the slides now if you want to screen share show them.
Yeah.
Anish, that line for link rel style sheet CSS, basically what it does is it'll link your style sheet. So CSS basically is a styling coding language per se that you can connect to your HTML documents to basically like, add colors and just, style your web page so it doesn't look like it's just like plain text. So we'll go into that a little bit later, but that's the gist of what that line does.
And yeah, so as you just saw, I just typed in the command get branch into my terminal. And so what that does, it's going to highlight whichever branch you're currently on. And so for our purposes, it should be set to master. If it's not already on master, then there's a command for switching to that, and that would just be git checkout master. But by default, it should be set to master.
Just so you can make the window a little bit bigger. Press Control plus.
Control plus. Oh, right.
Cool. You can make separate branches if you want, but for now, we're just going to be developing on the master branch. If you know how to use branching, feel free to do that. But for the sake of simplicity, we're just going to be using the master branch. All right, so I think we can go back to the slides now so I can talk about what everyone's going to do.
So Shravan, are you going to go back to the slides?
Yeah.
Shravan?
Everything good on your end, or you muted right now?
Oh, wait, what?
Oh, you can go back to your slides.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Sorry, my bad.
All good.
All right.
All right, cool. So in a minute, we're going to go into Discord and everyone can break out into rooms and work together to basically create this file. But for now, I'm going to basically talk about what we're going to be doing. I specified before a little bit about what we're going to do, but basically what you're going to do is you're going to choose 3 of your favorite Pokemon. So I really hope everyone here has played Pokemon at least once. If not, you could always just copy the Pokemon I had in my example. What you're going to do is you're going to make a header for each Pokemon name. So in this case, H2 is what I use, a medium-sized header. And then inside of that tag, you can basically put any text you want. In this case, it's going to be a Pokemon name. And then the next thing you want to do after you create your header is you're going to want to insert an image or a GIF of your favorite Pokemon. So I specify the tag here that you want to use, and you'll just put the link to your image inside of that source tag. And then the last thing you're going to do for each Pokemon is write a short description. So you can just write your description using the paragraph tags with bracket P. So for now, we're going to break off into Discord and, just go into separate rooms. So each of our volunteers is going to go into one room, and we're basically just going to work together and create this file. So yeah, I don't like the Zoom breakout room feature, so we're just going to be using that. But if you haven't joined the Discord already, I think someone dropped it in the chat before. So we're going to take a quick pause for, I'm going to say 10 minutes. and then we'll come back to the presentation. All right, Shravan, do you want to pause the recording?
Yeah, for sure.
Doc you're using. So in this case, you do the exclamation point doc type in full caps and then HTML. So this basically tells the web page that you're rendering an HTML document. Next, you want to have your HTML tags. So everything inside of these tags is HTML. It's just another reinforcement to the browser that you're typing HTML inside of this document. Next, we have our header. So inside of our head, all we really need to have is the title of the web page. So like I said before, I'll actually just show you our web page that we created. But this is what it looks like up here. I have Facebook Messenger open, but it says view your Pokemon. So anything that you put inside of these title tags will say view your Pokemon. I realize I'm not sharing my browser, so you didn't see that at all. But let me share my whole screen, actually. Is that possible? Man, Zoom is weird. Oh, there we go. All right. So now you should be able to see my full screen and all the chaos going on in it. So back to my browser, wrong browser. It says view your Pokemon up here. So everything in the title goes up there. So after that, you want to make sure you close off your head because this is just all the metadata you need. And then after that, you want to have your body. So this is the content of your HTML web page. Start off with you have, so in our case, we chose Mudkip as our first Pokemon. We have these in H2 tags because this is a medium-sized header. So if you look on, what we have here, this is what a medium-sized header looks like. It will look different on different browsers, but on my browser specifically, this is what a medium-sized header would look like. I can actually show you really quick what a large-sized header would look like. Only takes a second to change it. All you got to do is change H2 to H1, save, and then I can just refresh this page if there wasn't 30 things in the way. Come on. All right, there you go. See, so it says Mudkip, but this time it's a little bit bigger. Pretty straightforward. Someone asked why Mareep. I don't know what you have against Mareep, but Mareep's a great Pokemon. Someone suggested them as their top choices. Yeah, exactly. Stan Mareep. Infernape is another Pokemon that we chose to use, also in header 2. And then we chose Mareep as well. But anyway, we have our image tags. So in here we have where we specify our image. We just went on Google Images, copied a link. And one thing you always want to remember when you're inserting an image to a web page is to put it in quotations, because this is a string right here. If you don't have it in quotes, HTML won't be able to process it correctly. So you always want to make sure you have quotes surrounding the URLs you're going to be using. And also, you want to specify this is the source of the image that you're going to be using. And at the end, you can have the closing tag for image, or as I did here, you can actually just do the / and then the closing tag right there. So you can keep the image in just one tag, unlike H2 and paragraph. Image can just be one giant tag right there. So I think that goes over the gist of this. We're running a little bit low on time, so I think we're gonna move on to the next part of the workshop. So Shravan, if you want to share your slides again.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Yeah, so we're here now. Y'all can see this, right?
I see a box over yeah, you just got rid of it somehow. I see
yeah,
random box.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. So this is our nav bar. Wait, Henry, I forgot. Are you or me going over this part?
That would be you for this slide.
Okay, cool.
That'll be the next one.
All right, so we're just gonna add one simple thing to our HTML file. We already wrote the body of our HTML, but now we're gonna add a nav bar. So, if you ever go to a website and it has the top section where it says contact us or about us, or just just random hyperlinks to different parts of the website, that will be in the nav bar of the website. So we're gonna be making a nav bar for our own website specifically for two different things. One for creating Pokemon and two for viewing Pokemon. So we've already created some of our view Pokemon. We're going to be changing that in a little bit. But basically, if you look at our anchor tag below Strubman, if you want to bring out the pointer again, that might be useful. But
Yeah, for sure.
basically, you have a reference to /viewPokemon.html. So that will, if you click on the the text that says view all Pokemon, it will open up the web page view Pokemon.html. And similarly, we're going to have it say create new Pokemon at the top. And then if you click on that create new Pokemon text, it'll bring you to the create Pokemon webpage that we're going to create. So basically, if you don't already have the slides already, someone just posted it in the chat. But what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to paste that to the top of your body. So make sure you don't put it in your head. You want to have it inside of your body tags, but above all the text you did before. So I think we can move forward from that for now. Yeah, so basically, I'll give you guys a minute to do that, but I'll explain what we're going to be doing next, I suppose. So we're also going to be creating another HTML file called create Pokemon, which I think Henry is going over, right?
Yep.
Yes. Okay,
Yeah.
so I'll let Henry go over this.
Yep, so the next file we're going to be creating is create Pokemon. So this will be the web page that displays when you're actually trying to create a Pokemon. And so this will basically be the gist of what's going to appear on the page for the most part, at least for now. So it's just going to be a simple form where you can input like the name, the description, the different types, as well as your moves of the Pokemon. And so yeah, I am going to, for this file, I'm going to be live coding some of the skeleton code, and then afterwards, we'll give you time to code up the rest of the gaps of the page. So yeah, I'll go ahead and share my screen real quick. Cool. So yeah, so now we are in create Pokemon.html. And so if you haven't already, what you can do to create a new file is you can create click the new file button. And from here, you can just type in, say, create Pokemon.html, and then create the file. Otherwise, if you just want to right click, you can also do that too. If you just right click and create a new file, that will be able to create a new file for that. So yeah, we'll get started on doing create Pokemon. So for this, we're going to want to basically copy over the nav bar that we put into view Pokemon.html. But first, we do need to make sure that we specify this as an HTML page. So that in that sense, we're going to want to basically copy over some of the stuff where we have the HTML tag, as well as the head and the body. So yeah, and so what we'll do, we're just going to take the nav bar that we created previously, and we are going to copy that over into create Pokemon.html. Oh, and then also for head, we're going to want to make sure that for our title, we have this as Pokemon generator. And then later on, we'll also put something else in there as well. But for now, this should be all we have in our page. This should just be the nav bar that appears in our web page. And so in our body, what we're going to do next is we're actually going to create the form for creating Pokemon. And so what we're going to do first is we're going to create a form element. And what this is going to do is it's going to create our form so that all the elements that we put inside of it will be encapsulated within the form, and we are able to access that. So the next thing that we're going to do is create a div element. And so what this is going to do right now is just going to be a way of containing our form so that we can style it later on, just to make it a lot nicer to look at. And so what we're going to start off by doing is just creating a header, just so that we know that it is a Pokemon form where we can create the Pokemon. And then next up, we're going to start adding to our form. And so what we're going to want to do is first, we're going to create a new form row. And the reason why I'm putting all of these classes right now is just to make sure that we can refer to them later if we want to style them. It's also just a good way of keeping track of what elements is what, so that later on when you have like a really big HTML file, you can easily see like which part of the HTML form is corresponds to what part on the page. So the first thing that we're going to do is we want to have a spot to put a name for the Pokemon. And so the way we're going to do that is we're going to input this input element. And what this input element does, it basically creates a spot on the page to input some text. And so we're going to give it an ID of name so that we can refer to it when we actually grab data from the form, as well as a name. Clarification. So name is what allows you to grab the data from the form, and ID is what we're going to use to actually refer to the element itself. And we're going to put this required attribute onto the input so that we, that's not working out. Okay. Cool. So what the required attribute does, it basically says, oh, that this text element has to be filled before you can actually submit the form. So it's basically that little asterisk that you get on forms that basically tells you that you need to input some sort of value for that form. And so now we're actually going to label this input so that we know like that this is for the name. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to put for name so that we know that it refers to this ID of the input element. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create a label for name. And then later on, this isn't something you need to worry about too much right now, but we're going to add a button for generating a random name. And so a button is just basically a simple HTML element that when you click it, it does some sort of action. So right now this button isn't going to do much, but we will add to it later on in a future workshop. So next thing we want to do after we create a name for the Pokemon is we're going to want something for the actual description. So we'll go ahead and create a new form row. And we'll do sort of a similar process. We'll have a label for description. And then afterwards, we're going to have another input for the description itself. We'll just call it desk. And then, yeah, so just go ahead and call it desk. And then the name of it will also be desk. And we'll also call that required.
Hey, Henry, if you don't mind, can you explain really quickly what dividers are?
Yeah, so dividers are just sort of this like general kind of elements that you can basically put other elements into. So it acts as a sort of container element. So just think of it as like this sort of like box where you can put more elements and then rearrange as you like within that sort of div. So yeah, and I believe div is short for divider. So yeah. And then once we have our description done, we'll move on to creating the types. So create another form row for this. And so for this, we will create a new label for type 1. And so we'll just call that type 1. And once we do this, so for our types, we want to be able to select from a variety of different types. So to do that, we're going to add what's called a select element. And so what this does, it basically acts as this sort of like drop-down element where you can select from a bunch of like different options. So for this, we'll do the ID of type 1 as well as the name of type 1. And so from here, in order to actually add your options, what you do is you add an option tag. So for now, we'll just do the standard 3 elements or 3 types, which are going to be water, fire, and grass. And on your own time, you could probably go in and fill in with the rest of the types, but for now, I'll just keep it simple and keep it to water, fire, and grass. And so once you do that, so that's one type. For now, I'll keep moving on because of time, but in the next to do, we'll have you fill in the rest of the form. But for now, we're going to move on to the move set. So we're going to create another form row. And this is going to have the label for move 1, as well as an input for the name of the move. And that should be name. move one, and that should also be required.
Henry, someone has a question. What is the difference between ID and name?
Yeah, so name is, so for name is basically the type, name is basically a reference for when you actually grab data from the form later on using things like JavaScript or React, which we'll be learning later on. And then ID is just a way to actually access the element itself in terms of something like the label. So this for attribute, it actually references the ID of input. And then also ID can be used for CSS, which we'll be doing later on during the session. And yeah, I hope that answered your question. But if not, just let me know. But yeah, so that's will be the inputs for the move for the name itself. And then what we'll do is we'll create another label for move one type. And so this is basically to signify what type the move is. And we'll create another select element for this, which will be classified as move one type. And name equals move one type as well. And from here, we'll also add the options for water. And I'll just copy and paste fire and grass into here as well. So that's the type of the move. And then the next thing we have to do is we have to create another label for the power level of the move, because we want to make sure that our Pokemon are like pretty strong, you know? So what we're going to do for this is we're going to create another label for move one power. And so this should just be called power. And then we're going to have one last input for the actual so that we're able to basically specify a number for the type for the move. And so for this, so inputs are basically elements that can have multiple, they can have different types. So in this situation, the type of our input, rather than a text element, we're actually going to change it to a number. And so that's what type equals number does. And then so we'll set move one power, and we'll also set the name of move one power. And then so for this move, we want to make sure that it has a range of either 0 all the way up to 100. So we're going to set the minimum to 0. Yeah, set the minimum to 0, and then the max value to 100. And then we want to set the default value to 0. And from there, we have our last input. And from there, the last thing that we need to do is just create a sort of submit button so that we know that we are done creating our Pokemon. And so the way that we do this is we're just going to have an input at the very end with a type of submit. And so this will take the form of a submit button, and we'll just call it submit so that the button actually says submit. And then, yeah. So once I save this file, if I go to open up this file real quick and create pokemon.html, what we'll get is something that looks like this page right here. So we have Pokemon generator. This is our sort of nav bar. And then this is our form right here with our name, description, type, and a move. So this is very simple. You can probably add more types. We can add more moves, and we will do that in the next do. So Shravan, if you could share your
Yeah, I'll
slides again.
snag this real quick.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. So now it's going to be your turn. So as you saw from my web page, we only had one type and we only had one move. So now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding another type to the Pokemon, since Pokemon can have two types. And we'll also be creating 3 more slots for moves. And so since Pokemon, they don't necessarily have to have two types and they don't necessarily have to have more than one move, we want to make sure that the options for the types for these moves and types, that you have an option to basically have an empty option. And so that's why this code snippet right here for option value equals empty value will come in handy later on. And so I'm seeing questions in the chat to show the last part of my code again. So I can do that real quick. So I'll go ahead and share my screen again just to do that. Yep, so this was the last part of our code. So we have our different form rows, basically for the first type and the first move, as well as the power. So this is our first move. And then at the very end, we just have a simple input for the submit button. And then what that ends up looking like is this.
So I know that's a lot at once, guys. So I actually made a little paste bin of like the code that Henry typed up right here. So if you guys fell behind, you just want to copy paste what he wrote, feel free to just use that and then put that into your own code. Or you can just use that for reference.
Nice.
All right, so do you want to do breakout rooms now? Since we're ready.
Yeah, I'll put up the PowerPoint.
Cool.
But yeah, feel free to hop into any of the Discord calls if you need help with anything.
So I think we should take, I don't know, let's say 10 minutes for this.
Yeah, so we'll say
Let's try to
5:30.
do 10 minutes and get back at 5:30. If we don't finish in time, don't worry. We'll go over the solution, but we are running a little short on time, so we're gonna try to cut this to 10 minutes.
Also, all solution code will be posted. So if you ever fall behind, feel free to copy that after the workshop's done.
So y'all know what it should look like by the end of it. So I'll go ahead and do that. I will share, which screen is it? Screen 1. Cool. So by the end of it, wait, y'all can see my screen, right? Yes?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah,
All right, cool.
Yes, yes.
So yeah, by the end of it, you should basically have all this laid out. I added the rest of the types just because I wanted to. So yeah, you should have your name row, your description row, and then this is where we get into the types. So in this, within this type row, you're going to have two types. So that's going to be within the actual div itself. So you have the label and select for type 1, followed the label and select for type 2. And so for type 2, what that's going to have is this option value equals empty element. And that's just to make sure that when we actually like try to select the type, that we can actually just have it be an empty type. That way we know that the Pokemon only has one type. And so once we scroll down even further, that's where we get into our moves. So this form row div elements is for the first move. So as you can see here, it has the label for move 1, as well as the input. And so that's for the actual name itself. Then you'll have the label and select for the type of the move. And then followed by that would be the label and the input for the actual power of the move. So that was the first move that we created. I also just added the types right here. But if we scroll down, I also added the move 2, move 3, and move 4. And so for these, it's basically just the same thing. So for the most part, you really could just copy and paste it, but you would have to make sure that you change, say, like the IDs and the names just to make sure that they match up. So that's move 2, as well as just followed by having like an empty option for the type, as well as not having to put this as a required element. So yeah, it's basically just the same thing for move 2, same thing for move 3, and same thing for move 4. And by the end of it, we should have our input submit.
Hey, Henry, we have a question in the chat. So they're asking for label for type 2. Why are we using HTML4 instead of 4 for the label? So for label 1, for type 1, you have HTML4 versus 4.
Oh, actually, that was a mistake on my part. That's for later on once we get into using React. So for now, you don't have to worry about that. For now, it should just be 4. But later on, once we move into using React in a later workshop, that's when we'll get into these sort of issues where we'll actually have to change some of the HTML attributes because they don't actually match up in React.
All right, just so we have 25 minutes left, I think we should move on. That's cool with you, Henry.
Yeah. So, Charlene, if you could go back to the slides.
Yeah. Give me a sec.
Henry, I think someone has a question in the chat for you about the option attributes.
Got it. So I'll just answer that in chat.
Cool.
Henry, you're going to share your screen or should I?
Sorry?
Are we good to present or are you?
Yeah, just go ahead.
All right.
Okay, actually, David, do you mind answering the question in chat while I go ahead and move forward?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Okay. So now that we have our form created, what we're going to do now is we're actually going to work with CSS because we want to be able to actually make this look nice. What is CSS? So could we go to the next slide? Yep. So for CSS, what this is used for, it's basically used to style HTML and make it look nice within the page. And so the way that CSS works is that you first have a selector, which basically tells you which elements of the HTML you want to style, as well as the declaration, which basically is what types of properties you actually want to set, whether or not it's like the color or the font size or like the font. And this way you can actually affect like which parts of the HTML you want to change in terms of like the appearance and stuff. And so the way that you can actually style HTML is that there are actually 3 different ways. So the first way is that there's something called inline styling, and that's where you actually have a style attribute within the HTML elements. And from this way, you can actually style the properties directly within your HTML file. The next way is that you can also have a style tag. And so this style tag will usually go up in the head tag, and that's where you can style various parts of your elements, as well as classes and IDs. And then the last part, which is the part that we'll be using, is styling through an external CSS file. So in that sense, you'll be basically creating a new CSS file outside of your HTML. And this is basically where you keep all of your different styles in terms of CSS and the different selectors and stuff. And so in terms of selectors, so what do I really mean by selectors? So we want to be able to select different elements in different ways so that we can get the appearance that we want. And so one way we can do that is to basically select the element itself, which basically selects all of the different elements with that tag. So say if you wanted to style all of the paragraph elements or maybe all of the H1 elements, then you can use the P, the H1, or like the div selector. And then another way is to use, is to basically select elements based on their class and or their ID. And so we'll go over this in a little bit as well. And so here we have an example of actually styling a div. So in this example, we have a div with the class of example, as well as a paragraph element inside where that says the background of this div will be red. And then we also have some CSS above, which is basically going to say we want to select all div elements. And with those div elements, what we want to do is we want to change the background color to the hex code for red, which is FF. So yeah, I can probably, so I was going to demo this real quick. So I can do right now is share my screen one more time. Yep, so I'll go ahead and share my screen real quick, and I'll create a new element with a paragraph that says this is red. And then what we're going to do is go into our main.css file, and we're going to basically say that for all divs, what we're going to do is we're going to change the background color to be hashtag FF0000. And so if I save those two files, and if I go back into create Pokemon.html, what's going to happen? Hang on. I believe, change that. Okay. Well, it's not currently working for me right now, but you get the general gist of it. Basically, this should be able to style this div right here as red, as well as all other divs that are just, well, divs. So yeah, we can go back to the slides now, Shrevin.
Yeah.
And yeah, so for the next slide, we'll be going more into classes and IDs. So yeah, so previously I mentioned classes and IDs, and we also use them within our code. And so the reason why we use classes and IDs is because we usually run into the problem of we want to be able to select a specific element, say with the h1 tag, and we only want to style that particular h1 element. We don't want the style to be applied to all h1 elements. And so the way that we handle this is by using classes and IDs. And so class is basically a selector that selects multiple elements across the same class. And then ID is when you want to style an element that's just that element. And so the thing that you want to know about this is that in terms of priority, ID overrides the class, and then class overrides the element selector. And so this is another example of just using class and IDs. So as you can see here, we have a div that has the ID of header, as well as different paragraph elements that have the class of red. And so the way we handle this is that we do for IDs, we use the pound sign for header, and that way we can change just the div that has the ID. And then for red, we can similarly do the class selector for red and change the color to red. Right, so cool. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go into a new file called main.css. And so what we're going to do with that, just leave it open for now, since we're going to be starting to use CSS soon. For now, once you create the main.css file, the way that we actually apply that CSS to our HTML pages is first we have to actually link it up to our HTML pages. And so the way that we do that is that in both of our HTML pages that we create Pokemon and view Pokemon, in the head section, we actually have to add this line to link up the HTML to the CSS. So here we have link, and then we have the rel attribute, which just makes sure that we are linking a style sheet, which is what we use for CSS. And then for the href, we're just going to put the file that we are linking it to, which is main.css. And for the type should be text/CSS because we are using CSS for this. So I'll give you a bit of time just to set that up, just a couple of seconds. And yeah. Yep, so now that should be done, we can probably move on to the next part where we'll actually start to style some of the elements.
Yeah, so I can walk through this actually. So I'll just live code this, but what we're gonna do first is we're gonna basically style our nav bar. So right now, if you saw before, our nav bar is kind of just like, it says our header, and then it says, our two links. To answer someone's question in the chat, what does UTF-8 do? It basically specifies the character set that our web page is gonna be using. So there's different character sets you can use for like, different, like, I don't know, I think there's one with like emojis and stuff, but this just specifies that our text is gonna be with UTF-8 format. But yeah, I'm gonna share my screen and just live code this a little bit. All right, hopefully this works. Cool. So the first thing I wanna do, if you guys haven't made it already, is I'm gonna make a new file called main.css. This is our style sheet. And then I'm gonna go to view Pokemon, which is our more simple, one of the two HTML files we've created. And I'm going to attach our style sheet onto our HTML document. So like I put in the chat before, you can just type in link rel as style sheet, and then you can href main.css. So this makes sure that the CSS document is attached, and then I want to specify the type of this document, which is a CSS file. So once you add that, this officially attaches our style sheet onto our HTML document. But right now we don't even have anything inside of our style sheet. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a few lines. So specifically, this is going to be used to style our navbar. So we're creating the selector hashtag navbar. And then similar to like, regular coding languages, you have a little squiggly brackets. And then inside of those squiggly brackets, you want to type in background color. So background dash color. And then you want to have a colon. And then in this case, we're using a hex code. So this is BF4141. And basically what this will do is it will tell our HTML document that we want it to be this color. And I think VS Code is pretty cool because it shows the actual color of the background, which looks like it's a dark red color. And then we can also set the color of the border of our navbar. So if we type in border bottom, we can specify a few different things. So we can say our size, our font size, so 15 px, and then we want it to be solid black. All right, so what happens if we save this and we open up our web page? I'm gonna share my full screen. Just give me a second, if I can. I'll just share Chromium for now. All right, so go here. Oh, actually, I forgot to copy over the nav bar from here. I'm gonna quickly do that from Create Pokemon. So all I have to do is just copy this divider, paste it top of our body. All right, so also look how in our CSS file, we specify that we wanna reference the ID navbar. This is a selector for navbar. So we're specifically styling everything inside of this div, which is clarified to be navbar. So let's see what happens if I now refresh the page with our navbar. Oh, took a second to load. There we go. So now I have our Pokemon generator. It does look a little weird though because it's like black on red. So what if we wanted to change the color of Pokemon generator to white? We can also change the color of that. Do we do that in the next few slides? I think, yeah, Henry's gonna go over that in a couple slides, but basically this is what it looks like after we do our styling. And let's say, for example, we get rid of the styling. I'll show you again what it looks like. I know you can't see my code right now, but if I refresh the page, now this is what it looks like without styling. So you can see it makes a big difference just having a little bit of style added to our web page. And I'm gonna let Henry take over from here.
Yep, so if we go back to the slides, then the next part of it is just us going to be styling the navbar part of it. And so, yeah.
Should I share my screen?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Henry, by the way, we only have 10 minutes left, so I want to speed through these next few sections.
Got it. Okay. So yeah. So now the next part of the nav bar that we want to style is we want to move basically the create new Pokemon as well as the view all Pokemon to the left to the right side of the nav bar. So if we go to the next slide, we're going to see how we can do that. So the way we're going to actually do this is with using Flex. And so Flex is something that's native to CSS. And it's a way of basically positioning your elements through different spacings as well as different alignments. Yes, we will be putting this in main.css as well. And so yeah, the way we do this is as you can see, we added the display, justify content, align items, and then margin bottom is something else we're talking about. But those three properties, display, justify content, and align items, are Flex properties that we're going to be going over. So in the next slide, we'll be talking about Flexbox. So Flexbox is something in CSS that you can do to basically, like I said, group items within the section, as well as change dimensions based on the size of the screen. And so the way you want to start out by using Flexbox is first you need to add the display flex property to your element in order to actually use these Flexbox properties. And so some of the common Flexbox properties that you'll be using are justify content, which adjusts items along the main axis. So by default, it'll be horizontally. And then you also have align items, which aligns items across the cross axis, which is basically perpendicular to the main direction, which by default would be vertically. And then flex direction is a way where you can actually switch this main direction to either row, column. You can actually switch the row in order to be row reverse, or you can even do column reverse. And then another way that we can actually use selectors to use different elements is by using combinators. And so in this way, we can select elements in relation to another element. So for example, if we wanted to select all elements with the class name red, that is the child of any div element, then we could use the left angle or the right angle bracket for div .red. And then we could also do other things like selecting an element with, say, the ID name of header that is adjacent sibling to any div element. So this would be any element that is just directly adjacent to a div element. So you can do that with, say, div plus pound header. And there's many other combinators that we can use, but for now, we won't spend too much time on this. So an example for this would be using the right angle bracket to basically style the main Pokemon generator text. So what this is going to do is basically it's going to change the color of any H1 element that is the child of title. And so for this, we are changing the Pokemon generator text to white, as well as adding a margin of left by 16 pixels so that it's not directly against the left side of the page. And so what do I mean by margin? So margin and padding are different ways of spacing out your elements. So based on this diagram, you have your content, which is usually in the center of your element. And then usually if you were to create like a sort of border around your element, basically the space inside of that border would be your padding. That's how you adjust the spacing within your element. And then margin is on the outside of the border. And that basically is the spacing between that element and, say, another element. And so in terms of margin and padding, this is what it would look like on a page in terms of being able to say, so there's some margin or there's padding inside of the border to the right of it, and then there's margin on the bottom of each element so that it gives you space between those two elements. So yeah, with that, we are going to just basically wrap up the rest of the CSS that we need to do. So for this, it will be live coding in terms of just finishing up the CSS to make it look nicer. These are basically all of the guidelines for what the CSS should look like. The underlined items should be what your selectors are, and then the rest of the description should be what your properties should be set to. David, anything else you want to add? Because I realized that I might have accidentally skipped over took over your part.
It's okay. It's fine. Yeah. If you just want to live code that, I think that's fine.
So I can go ahead and just, I guess since we're basically at the end of the workshop, I can just show what the end result should be. Is that all right? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I'll go ahead and share my screen to basically show what it should look like at the end.
If you are watching the recording, maybe you want to work through these yourself before you see the solution code. But since we have only a few minutes left of the workshop, we're just going to show the solution right here.
Yep. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. This is what the code at the end for the CSS file should look like. You have your nav bar that we worked through, as well as the title. And then later on, we went through the nav buttons for the anchor tags, as well as the create page, and then the Pokemon form, as well as the form row. And so by the end of it, what you should have is something like, that's not sharing properly, is it? Give me a second to share this again real quick. Screen 1. So by the end of it, this should basically be what it looks like. So you have your nav bar, which is properly styled, as well as different spacings for the moves, the types, the description, as well as just the general form. So with that being said, Shravan, any last words, I guess, since I know we're running low on time at the moment?
Sorry, what was that?
Do you have any closing remarks since
Oh,
we're basically at the end of the workshop?
Yeah, we know that was really fast, and we really appreciate you guys all coming out and staying the whole time if you did. So all solution code will be on the Discord, and some of us will be sticking around after to answer any questions, because we know some people had questions that we couldn't answer. So feel free to hop in the calls and we'll answer those questions. But yeah, so there's no homework. If people are wondering, there's no homework or anything. If you want to work on other things, then basically just wrap everything up that we covered here before the next workshop. And the next workshop will be on JavaScript, and it'll be the same time next week. But yeah, no PAs, no surprise pop quizzes or anything.
Yeah, thank you guys all for coming. Really appreciate seeing you guys all here. We had a bigger turnout than we thought we would.
Yeah, and if you're confused by the end, at the end, if you're confused right now with all the information we just gave you, that's totally fine. That's just a sign, and that means you're learning new things. And I will say that every single workshop from here on, I hope that after every single workshop, you'll feel a little bit confused, because that means that you'll be learning something new. But we're always going to be right here to help you understand things. We'll always be available in office hours. We have our resources up, so feel free to always ask us if you have any questions.
Yes. Thank you everyone for coming. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
I think we'll just be in a Discord so we can end the Zoom.
I'm gonna hop into